Hello, all you wonderful people. I am back, and we're going to be talking about AEW today, specifically the Continental Classic as an annual concept. I know we're a few weeks removed from the finals of the tournament, but it's something that I wanted to talk about because AEW is dead set on doing this annually as a yearly concept. And I am not the biggest fan of it. While I did enjoy the matches that closed out the tournament, that was more on the performers being amazing than the concept itself having a lot of intrigue or excitement tied to it. So it's one of those concepts where the people involved in it, the performers involved in it, have to elevate a less than stellar concept. And I'm going to be offering my ideas to help improve the Continental Classic as an annual concept. Not that Tony Khan is going to take any of my suggestions or any of my ideas. I mean, I'm a nobody on the internet, so who cares what I have to say? But, it's a fun little experiment on my end to just kind of talk about something related to AEW. I intended on getting this video out last week, but things got in the way, scheduling and all that other fun stuff. So you'll be getting two videos from me this week. I'm going to be filming them both today on Martin Luther King Day / Inauguration Day. So a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and I'm here, talking about a crappy wrestling tournament that wrapped up, over a month ago, but whatever. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and all that other fun stuff. So, we also got the report that Britt Baker might be leaving AEW, and there's talks about her being a locker room cancer that Tony Khan is finally fed up with, and they're gonna end that relationship and part ways. Now, I've heard the reports about Britt Baker before, about her being kind of mean girlsy and kind of a pain in the butt in the locker room. A few years ago, you could almost get away with it because she was one of the cornerstone acts of the company and was definitely the highlight of the women's division. I remember when she first started getting over, and I'm like, Britt's the girl. I mean, she's got to win the belt. I mean, she's obviously the one. And when they had their first major crowd back, after COVID, and she won the belt, that felt like a big moment and a big payoff because it felt long overdue. And had there been crowds before then, she probably would have gotten the belt earlier than that. But she was one of the best acts in the company for a while. It was like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. Now, and I don't know what's true and what's not. I wasn't there, so I don't want to, pass judgment on anybody. But we're at a point now with AEW's women's division that I would say Toni Storm is better than her. I would say Mariah May is better than her. I would say Mercedes Moné has more star power, clearly. Whatever misgivings I might have about Mercedes, she's obviously a bigger name and probably more deserving to be put into the spotlight based on her star power alone. And then you have some girls on the lower tier end of things who are like just better performers or more entertaining, like the Jamie Hayters, the Willow Nightingales, and my girl Harley Cameron, who is immensely entertaining every time she goes out there. The need for a Britt Baker isn't there like it once was. Not saying the women's division is perfect. Not saying that, if she had the right attitude, she couldn't contribute. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that, there's less of a willingness to put up with her behavior when she's been surpassed by so many other talents in other, categories that make a great talent, whether it be promos or in-ring or what have you. And, so it's kind of like, man, this relationship's probably not working out. So AEW wanting to part ways with her, probably for the best. Obviously I don't want to comment too much on anything personal because again, I'm not there and I'm not part of it, so it's none of my business really. But the relationship with Adam Cole is no longer there, so it's like her ties to the company are all like kind of dropping one by one. If her attitude is a problem, that's something AEW can't really afford. They went through bad attitude with a few other things and a few other situations that kind of worked against them. And this is just another example of, oh my God, the crap that goes on in the AEW locker room. We've got a mean girlsy clicky bullshit going on as well. And, and Britt as a performer, she has declined. And I noticed it right before she took her long break where she was gone for almost a year. And it didn't get that much better when she came back. So you're kind of looking at it like, all right, diminished skills, bad attitude. What do you do? And she's been surpassed by a bunch of other people who are. I mean, Andre the Giant diminished clearly by the late 80s, but there was still like a star power there that worked. And you could use them for big situations and big things like WrestleMania 3, like the main event, like WrestleMania 4, like WrestleMania 6, the tag title match. There was still some value to Andre, even though he noticeably declined. But if Britt's declining and she's got this bad attitude and she's being a problem, and, there was the whole situation with MJF that broke right before All In and various other things, like something about All In that makes everybody go haywire and insane, where they just have problem after problem after problem. It's kind of wild, but it's probably best to part ways, because I just don't think AEW needs her, and if she's going to be a backstage problem, that's not something AEW can really afford, especially with all the other bad press surrounding them. So maybe it's time to part ways and let two ships kind of sail off into the sunset and go their separate ways. So I don't know. But again, I don't know what's true and what's not. It's just the impression that I'm getting is that she's become a bit of a problem. And that's not something AEW can really afford. But moving on to the Continental Classic, something that I wanted to talk about, and talking about the Continental Classic as an annual concept. And this is something I've talked about on this channel a lot, with like annual concepts that work, annual concepts that don't work. Royal Rumble, great for starting off and kicking off the WrestleMania season. I think as a concept, it's not always executed well, but as a concept, I think it works fantastic. And it's a perfect way to start the WrestleMania season and start the build up to WrestleMania. So Royal Rumble, great annual concept. Money in the Bank, I am sick to death of multi-person ladder matches, but at least the prize carries some intrigue with it, so there's some kind of value there. The match itself, I don't give two craps about, but whoever ends up with that briefcase is like, okay, it's somebody to follow, and, we're going to get a shock cash-in, which those have become kind of stale, personally, because every company is doing them now in some way, shape, or form, but it's become like an overused trope at this point. But still, the prize of Money in the Bank carries some weight, even if the match itself is about as useless as anything. And it's like, man, all these people, and there's two of them now, because there's a male one and a women's one, and it's like all these performers going out there and risking life and limb on these dangerous matches that I'm gonna forget about within an hour, and it's kind of a shame. But again, at least the winner matters. War Games, I've talked about it in the past, and even in its heyday, the War Games, it's hard to make that work as an annual concept, because you have to justify a team battle every single year, and sooner or later it's going to feel forced. Happened with WCW. I think we're at that point right now with WWE, where it's just like, it seems cool when you have the right storyline and the right people involved, but trying to force it annually, it doesn't carry the same weight. Hell in a Cell, when they tried to make that into a pay-per-view, and they ran with that for a decade, that did more to damage Hell in a Cell's reputation than anything, because it's like, it's the type of match that should be used when you need it, not a specific part of the calendar year. It's got to be, those are very story-driven, and you need like the justification for War Games, for Hell in a Cell, those type of things. Elimination Chamber, I don't know, they put it in February right before WrestleMania, and I was kind of like, I was getting sick of how many pay-per-views there were, and I felt like the Rumble was more than sufficient, and, cramming 2 Elimination Chambers to set up another title match or both title matches for WrestleMania, just kind of one of the earliest examples of wrestling's just going way too much into excess and being overcrowded. So, those are things that, kind of work and don't work as annual concepts. Right now, AEW is really kind of settled into the Continental Classic as an annual concept. They've done them 2 years in a row, and I am not a fan of it. They've also done the Owen Hart tournaments, which that's another thing entirely, and I'm also not the biggest fan of that. But they at least, this past one, they at least made it so that the 2 winners would get the title shots at All In. So it's, at least there's a point, and I'm like, okay, I can live with that. But the Continental Classic, doing that every year, first of all, it's a tournament, and tournaments have been wildly overexposed. WWE does too many tournaments, AEW does too many tournaments, and so you throw in at the tail end of the year, it's another tournament. It's like, well, you did 2 of them earlier in the year with the Owen Hart stuff, and you do like 19 other ones along the way, leading up to the Continental Classic. And like I said, WWE does a lot of them. New Japan does them all the time. And the appeal of a tournament just isn't there as a concept, because it's yet another overexposed concept in pro wrestling, where it's just been done way too much. And you're filling up your shows with these kind of cold matches that theoretically should be important because it's building to the finals of this epic tournament, round robin style. And which I don't have a problem necessarily with a round robin style tournament. It does feel like it's Tony Khan's attempt at trying to replicate the G1 Climax, which G1 Climax, same thing, where it's like, yeah, it's a bunch of matches. A lot of them are ice cold or whatever, but at the very least, the prize is main event at Wrestle Kingdom. So it sets up Wrestle Kingdom's big main event. This year's Wrestle Kingdom main event, I thought was a snooze fest, terrible match, but at least there's a justification for the G1 Climax existing in that it sets that match up. Most years it worked, this year it did not, them's the breaks. But in AEW's case, what's the point of the Continental Classic? It's for yet another friggin' belt that they've got floating around that no one cares about. And, no knock on Okada, but he's got a championship, and you've got the International Championship, which, Takeshita is the international champion. I had to look it up before this video. I'm like, who's the international champion again? I don't remember. Then you've got the TNT championship, and you've got the world championship, and you've got the trios championships, and the tag championships, and there's 2 women's titles. And then you've got ROH and all of those friggin' belts. It's too many friggin' belts. And it's really not worth doing this annual tournament just to crown or to award another title that's floating around the company that's defended all year long anyway. So what's the point of this tournament just for this one friggin' belt that's not even anywhere near the most important, and it's just another title floating around that gets lost in the shuffle with the 900 other belts that are floating around. And that has, that's to say nothing for the New Japan and the AAA and all the other belts that get worked into AEW programming. They've got too many friggin' belts, and that's part of the problem. And part of what I'm going to try and address here to make the Continental Classic work as an annual concept, and what you've got to do with this, number one, qualifying for the tournament needs to be radically fixed, because right now it's just like, whatever names get thrown in there, they're in it, and that's it. And you can get away with that to some degree in the Royal Rumble because it's 30 people, and some Joe Schmo could enter the Royal Rumble. It's like, whatever, you got 30 spots to fill. The Continental Classic right now, I believe it's 12, and it's split into the 2 leagues, the Blue League and the Gold League, which I don't understand those colors. You would think it would be like black and white or red and blue, like 2 colors that are opposite to each other but also complement each other, like black and white, like red and blue, like gold and silver, something like that. So blue and gold, like I don't understand like why those colors for the 2 leagues. But in any case, it's 12 people that wrestle in all these cold matches every week with no rhyme or reason for why someone qualified, who qualified, whatever. So to me, number one, you need to come up with a justification for why people qualify. And number two, I feel like 12 is probably too much for this kind of tournament. A round-robin tournament means there's going to be a lot of matches, and a lot of them get filled up on TV, and it just clutters up televised programming. And if people don't care about the tournament, it's going to make the TV shows a slog, because it's just a bunch of matches in a tournament that ultimately nobody really cares all that much about. You've got to raise the stakes there. So, and you've got to justify how everybody got into this tournament, how they all qualified for it. We've got the NFL playoffs going on right now. Every team that qualified for the NFL playoffs had to win the right amount of games to get in. And it's like, that's a system that works, because it lets you know who is justified in getting into the NFL playoffs before everything resets to 0-0. And right now with AEW's Continental Classic, it's just, whatever, whoever. Like, whoever's in gets in, whatever. So I was kind of thinking about ideas. It's like, well, rather than just be a negative Nelly and just shit all over the whole thing, like, what would you do to kind of fix it, rather than just... Because honestly, if you gave me an ounce of power within AEW, one of my first things would be like, Continental Classic, just scrap it. Get rid of all these belts, get rid of that, get rid of this. So, just start, scorched earth and kind of start over and go that way. I would be unifying and getting rid of belts like nobody's business. I would be just like Ron Swanson, slash it. I would be going absolutely crazy. So I was thinking about it with the Continental Classic and all these ideas that I had to kind of fix it. And a couple ideas I came up with. Number one, you got to reduce the number of participants from 12 to 8. Don't do the separate leagues thing. Just have 8 participants, and then do the round robin style, and then the 2 top scoring participants face each other in the finals, and then that's that. Basically a simplified version of what they're doing now. Keep the scoring system. I think that's simple enough to follow, and that works. But reduce the number of participants. Don't do the separate leagues thing, and just have the 2 finalists, the 2 top scoring participants face each other in the finals at the pay-per-view, and just keep it easy, breezy, and simple. Just simplify it to at least that degree. And 8 participants also makes it a little bit harder to get into, makes it those spots a little bit more coveted, and makes those spots feel a little bit more important in the grand scheme of things. Now, how would one qualify? How would you determine who are the 8 participants in this match? I've got 2 ideas. And this is what I was kind of spitballing while I was thinking about it. My first idea is to bring back the ranking system, which I am in favor of having a ranking system just to kind of make sense of who's going for what title and what have you. And, rather than just, hey, I want a title shot. I'm mad at you, grr, and you get a title shot. I've never been a fan of that. So it's like people should have to like work their way up the rankings, and it's all work anyway. So you can kind of like, it's not like it's that hard to keep track of. You make it up as you go. So I don't know. That's how and some people say it the other way, where it's like, it's all a work. Who cares who gets the title shot? It's like, yeah, but it's like any other story. I want things to feel important. I want things to be built up to, and things to matter. And, if you constantly tell me that things don't matter, then why am I watching? And so I would bring back the ranking system. And then every November they freeze it. The top 8 contenders qualify for the Continental Classic. So that's right off the bat. If you're in the top 8 of contendership, you get to be in the Continental Classic. Now, what is the prize for the Continental Classic under my new system? Rather than having it be for a 3rd champion, or a 4th or 5th or 6th or whatever championship that nobody cares about, make it for a title shot at the next big pay-per-view, which would be Revolution the next year. So the finals will be at World's End, and then the title shot that results from the Continental Classic finals would be at Revolution the next year. And in that case, I would probably rename it to something else, like the Championship Classic, or the Contenders Classic, or something like that. But in any case, that's what I would probably do in that case. Because when you make it for a world title shot, now it's like, okay, I have to pay attention to it, because, this is going to set up a big title match a few months later, so this is a really big deal. And it makes it that much more important, rather than fighting for yet another title that nobody flipping cares about. So the prize would be different, and the number of participants would be different, and how those participants qualify. Like I said, first method would be bring back the ranking system, top 8 contenders, freeze it in November, they're the ones who qualify. And that makes the most sense. And it also, it's like, end of the year, you track the contenders throughout the entire year, the rankings change all throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, you get your contenders for this big tournament that will then set up the first major pay-per-view title match of 2025, or the next year. And it's like, okay, cool. All cool. All right, all that works. But I was also thinking of another way. Like, again, if I was a voice within AEW, and I would be like, okay, I would be like, Tony, we gotta get rid of some of these belts. There's too many belts. And he'd be like, nope, I want all my belts. I want to have all these championships. I'm a belt mark. And it's like, okay, how am I going to make this work? To make being a champion important when there's so many belts floating around, because that's one of my biggest problems with adding so many belts to a company. And again, WWE adding a women's IC and US title, I was wholly against it, because now it's like, all right, there's 4 women walking around with belts, and 6, because there's tag titles, and it's like the pedestal of being a champion diminishes the more belts you add, because it's a lot easier to get, because they increasingly become participation trophies, and you stop caring after a while. There's too many belts, and on the men's side too. It's a general problem across the board, and one that I'm sick to death of, quite honestly. But I was like, okay, if I was in AEW and Tony told me, nope, you can't subtract any belts, can't do it. I was like, all right, reshaping this tournament, this Continental Classic, what if we set it up so that instead of bringing back the ranking system and the top 8 contenders, what if we set it up so that all the male title holders, which would be 8, aside from the world champion, you have the TNT champion, the international champion, the Continental Champion, which I would probably rename at some point, the 2 tag champions, and the 3 trios champions. What if they automatically qualify? So if you're a male title holder in AEW, you automatically qualify for this, whatever I would rename this tournament, the Championship Classic or something like that. So it makes being a title holder important, and if you are a champion, a tertiary champion, you qualify for this tournament to eventually, trade that in and get a world title shot at some point. Not the most ideal solution. I would also, I would be going through all those belts and be like, all right, what's a way I can differentiate them from all the rest? I'm sure I've said it on this channel before, but I'll restate it here. My idea for the TNT title would be it is a television exclusive championship that's only defended on TNT, and it's defended once a month with a 15-minute title, with a 15-minute time limit, and you build up to that title match. So you have one big title match on TV once a month for this belt. And maybe the added stipulation that if you successfully defend the TNT title 3 times in a row, you can trade it in for a title shot. Something like that. Something to kind of make those TNT title matches on TV feel a little bit more important. I would do a similar thing with the TBS championship on the women's side of thing. Again, if I can't unify or get rid of them. That's not allowed. I'm gonna try and make this work. The international championship could be like the Travelers belt. So it's defended outside of AEW in other companies. Kind of a way to build working relationships with other companies and have an attraction for those other companies, while also allowing a pipeline for some of outside talents to get a tryout in TNA in AEW. And the international title would be defended outside of AEW or within AEW, but against people from outside the company. So it's purely like Traveler's belt or Outsider's belt, and that's how that championship would work. So a way to kind of create those, oh my God, Tomohiro Ishii showed up on Dynamite or something. And it's kind of reduce that number and kind of allow a legitimate gateway to make that happen. There's this championship that allows for that type of thing. Rather than making it every other match where I'm supposed to know who everybody is and everything, and because there's times where it's I'm a diehard wrestling fan who has a fairly extensive knowledge of what goes on outside of WWE, and even I have a hard time keeping up with all these talents that they're constantly bringing in with no build-up or anything. So using the international title is kind of a bottleneck to kind of slow that flow down and be okay, defend it outside of the company, and an invitation for outsiders to come work within AEW to go for this championship and maybe earn a spot and kind of ease their way in front of the AEW audience rather than just get thrown out there. It's oh my God, it's so-and-so. Nobody else knows who they are except for those 2,000 people on the internet, but oh my God. And that type of thing to kind of make it easier to introduce people. So that would be my plan for the international title. Continental title, I don't know. I guess, one idea I had was to kind of because again, if Ring of Honor has to exist for whatever reason, maybe the Continental belt could be reshaped as kind of a title that gets defended within Ring of Honor, and it could be a gateway to get people. First of all, you'd have to clearly define an ROH roster and an AEW roster, which that's a whole other bag of kittens that you'd have to figure out. But maybe use that as a gateway belt to kind of defend against ROH talents that are looking to get elevated to AEW. And if you win, if you're an ROH guy that wins, you get elevated to the AEW roster or something along those lines. I don't know. It's a freaky idea. Again, trying to make sense out of the mess that AEW has created with these championships and all these concepts, very hard to do. So I'm just trying to do my best and coming up with some ideas to make it work. And then tag team and trios titles, fairly self-explanatory. I think the only changes I would make there are tag titles are defended in strict tag team wrestling traditional rules that you expect to see, and any 80s tag team match, that's what you would see. The tag team titles would be defended in those traditional rules. And the trios titles can be defended in luchador style rules where if you get knocked out of the ring, somebody else can jump in, and it's keep the action constant. So those would be more of that Mexican style and the tag titles would be more traditional tag team wrestling style. Again, just to make those matches different, because now it just feels like every match is a pinball match whenever there's more than 2 people involved. And hopefully, like, having strict rules for both tag divisions would be a way to differentiate the titles and prevent every multi-man match from being a clusterfuck. But I don't know. Again, these are all ideas that are floating around in my head. So, with all that said, if method number 2 of qualifying for this reshaped tournament that I've thought through, if you are a male title holder, you qualify for the tournament, and that would result in 8 participants, and then all the champions battle it out in all these matches. Now, obviously, I'm not a fan of trios and tag team champions. It would create a bunch of matches where partners wrestle each other, and you would do that every year, and that would lose its luster after a while. It's fun the first time, and maybe it's fun for like one match, but then it's like, you get like a handful of them a year, and it's like, and maybe the finals would be a battle between the 2 tag team partners as well, and it's like, and that's a bit much, but other than that, it's like, again, I'm just trying to improve a broken concept here. So those are my ideas to fix the Continental Classic. Again, I like the idea of having an annual event. AEW could definitely use that. Like I said, Royal Rumble works great. Money in the Bank, at least the prize matters. But there's not that, like, AEW is kind of missing that kind of key, like, this is the big event that we look forward to every year to kind of kick off something special or set up something special, and that's something they really don't have. And again, I'm not expecting a rip-off of the Royal Rumble. There's too much of that going on as well. But something like it to kind of set you apart from WWE, but also, like, build anticipation. Because as I've been saying a lot lately, a lot of the magic of pro wrestling is building anticipation for something. It's, everybody thinks it's like, go out there and have 5-star matches every week, and that's going to work. And I'm like, clearly it does not, because I hear a lot of this is awesome chants. I hear a lot of fight forever chants on AEW and WWE programming, and I am so bored of the in-ring action because none of it means anything. And the matches are too long, the matches mean nothing, and it's just, they've trained the audiences, the live crowds, to just kind of react like Pavlovian dogs to the same spots over and over again. And there's not as much building of anticipation for stuff, and that's where the key is. That's where the money is. Where you can make me want to see something. If you just give everything away every week, I'm just kind of bored with it. And, it doesn't help that SmackDowns are 3 hours long now. Those are a chore to sit through. And even with it, me fast forwarding through most of it. And AEW have exhausted themselves trying to do 5-star matches every week. And it's right. It's just too much. It's just way too much going on. And there's a lot of things they could do to make things better. But that concludes this video. Hopefully you all enjoy it. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Again, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new content, and submit questions for Q&As. Those will be coming up soon. I'm going to be filming another video right after this. You'll be getting 2 videos from me this week, and hopefully it all goes well and you all have a lot of fun with that. But that is all I have for now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all later.